Most people assume that when soldiers are taught a survival technique during wartime, it's because it works. That assumption is wrong more often than we like to admit. One of the least discussed realities to emerge after World War II, and one that quietly carried into the Korean War, is that entire categories of field wisdom were passed along not because they were effective, but because they sounded effective under pressure. Some of these practices were later banned, not because they were dangerous in an obvious way, but because they wasted time, energy, and false hope when men could least afford any of those things. Before we go further, if this kind of overlooked, experience-driven military history matters to you, history that examines what failed as carefully as what succeeded, subscribe to Echoes of Valor. This channel exists for viewers who value depth over mythology and lessons over legend. There was no dramatic announcement, no formal field manual revision stamped with red ink declaring the lie trick forbidden. Instead, the ban came the way many military corrections do, through omission and redirection. Training materials stopped mentioning it. Medics were instructed to discourage its use. Units were advised to discard lie stocks, unless specifically required for equipment maintenance. When questions arose, the answer was simple and firm. Do not use lie on the body. This quiet suppression mattered. Militaries rarely like to advertise mistakes, especially ones born from improvisation, under fire. But internally the lesson was absorbed. Chemical aggression without precision was not medicine. It was damage. That lesson would resurface in harsher form during the Korean War. Korea exposed how dangerous survival myths become in extreme cold and scarcity. The Korean War punished improvisation more brutally than most conflicts of the 20th century. Cold shattered assumptions. Supply lines collapsed. Units operated for weeks with minimal support. In that environment, old myths resurfaced. Some soldiers arrived in Korea having heard versions of the lie trick secondhand, passed down as a last resort solution. In freezing temperatures, chemical burns did not behave predictably. Tissue damage compounded rapidly. Wounds that might have remained superficial in Europe or North Africa became catastrophic in Korea's winters. Medical officers, many of them veterans of World War II, recognized the pattern immediately. They had seen this before, and this time there was even less tolerance for it. Korea reinforced a critical truth. Survival techniques that ignore environmental stresses do not merely fail, they accelerate collapse. One of the quiet legacies of this failure is how modern military doctrine treats so-called common-sense solutions. Today's survival training emphasizes physiological limits, tissue preservation, and long-term sustainability rather than chemical shortcuts. Antiseptics are selected not just for lethality to microbes, but for compatibility with human recovery. Improvisation is taught within strict boundaries. If a method damages the body faster than it helps, it is rejected, no matter how logical it appears on paper. This shift did not come from theory. It came from watching men suffer preventable complications because a harsh chemical was mistaken for a cure. The lie trick became a cautionary tale taught indirectly. Effectiveness is measured in outcomes, not intentions. What this story reveals about warfare is how quickly desperation rewrites judgment. Soldiers did not use lie because they were careless or foolish. They used it because war strips away options. When resources vanish, the mind reaches for certainty wherever it can find it. Lie felt certain, it burned, it reacted, it did something visible, but warfare punishes solutions that prioritize immediacy over consequence. The body remembers every shortcut, tissue remembers, infection remembers, and the margin for error shrinks faster than belief can adjust. This is why historians must pay attention to what failed. Victory narratives do not teach restraint, failure does. Remembering abandoned practices matters because future crises create the same pressures. Survival myths do not stay buried. They resurface whenever systems strain, during wars, disasters, or prolonged isolation. The language changes, but the logic repeats. Harsh equals effective. Pain equals progress. Reaction equals control. The lie trick reminds us that not all banned practices were forbidden because they were cruel or immoral. Some were banned because they simply did not work, and pretending otherwise cost lives. Understanding that distinction is part of understanding war honestly. If you value this kind of analysis, history that respects complexity, failure, and consequence, subscribe to Echoes of Valor. Share this video with others who believe military history deserves more than surface-level retelling. These overlooked lessons still matter because the conditions that created them have not disappeared.